Welcome to Intelligent Human Leadership, leading yourself and your team. Do you ever find yourself grappling with a lack of confidence in your team? Or battling the relentless waves of concern and fear? Are the pressures to meet client expectations and the burden of missed opportunities weighing you down? On this podcast, you'll discover the strategies and insights that will reignite your team's morale and help you find the harmony and knowledge you seek to propel your business forward. Here, we explore innovative ways to reignite your creative spirit and achieve greatness, empowering you to lead with intelligence, compassion, and resilience. If you're ready to dive deep into your core of leadership challenges and be guided toward success, here's your host, founder of Steward Your Business, David Carr.
Welcome back to the Intelligent Human Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, David Carr. So grateful to have you here once again as we dive into a continuing series on how do we focus on leadership that really works. If you missed the introductory podcast episode where I kind of gave an overview, go back just a couple of those there, and we talked about communication in the last episode. Of course, these can be standalone, but you're going to get a lot more out of it if you go back and listen to the whole series. We're going to get in today on relationships, moving from turf wars to trust. How do we build connection, relationships in our businesses? How do we show that? So that it's helping us, it's getting us to where we need to be? Well, we're going to uncover where there's areas of brokenness in leadership, from mistrust to gossip to silos, why healthy relationships are really a foundation to sustainable growth in team cohesion. I was just talking about sustainability on my other podcast, Business Roundtable podcast this week. Go check it out. We have many episodes there too, where I have others come in and guest. But today I get the opportunity to share with you some key points that we're going to go through and really set the stage here why relationships matter in today's age with so much technology, AI, other things out there. What I find so important, so meaningful is our relationships with one another. We can have great strategy, we can have great vision and talent, but if the trust is fractured, the team suffers. And when I say team, we always kind of lead in with an understanding of under business. But reality, this goes to our home life, our children, our community, the organizations that we're in. And, poor relationships lead to a number of problems, challenges. I mean, how many of you have experienced gossip or hidden agendas? You're blindsided by the way that people are showing up or not showing up in your world. The showing up perhaps of micromanagement, mistrust, silos, and people are isolating themselves. And we do this, unfortunately, somewhat naturally, where we'll isolate and disconnect from others, and leaving ourselves on an island. Can be turf wars. We're getting into different groups of, this is my problem, this is their problem, which is going to get into our future episodes when we're talking about execution and capacity, even alignment for that matter. But lower morale, there's disengagement. And so, when we're not building our relationships up, they're breaking down. It doesn't stay static. It doesn't stay, at one level. It's either being built up or it's breaking down. And so leaders who fail to build strong relationships create, again, these isolated islands of effort instead of being unified in purpose. Think about this when you're connected, how much more impactful you're going to be versus being isolated and having to go in and out of, think about an island is a really good way to envision it. I went on a cruise last year, amazing experience, but there's a lot of effort and energy to get from one place to another to get to that island that's isolated. When you're connected and you have roads and networks and resources, you can be more interdependent, stronger. It's not that it can't be done, but it's more challenging. And certainly we want to help you become more intelligent in the way you're showing up, leading yourself and your teams, the whole foundation of the Intelligent Human Leadership podcast. So let's get into 3 levels of relationship breakdown. Um, I like to look at it, as we go through these podcasts, give you a framework to break things down and look at them. There's always things outside of us, our world, around us, where teams work against each other instead of with and for each other. These are things going out around us. There's confusion perhaps around roles, responsibilities, even the shared goals. And so if we're not understanding that, it can be very challenging. I remember being asked for a sales goal one year at my company. It was coming from the top down, and I didn't have an understanding of what was the true alignment. Who are the clients exactly that we wanted to be going after? What's the market sectors? How should this look? What's the makeup? And so, what I find often there's confusion in roles and responsibilities. How are we moving forward? And then that causes conflict. It causes people perhaps doing duplicative work, working, again, not for each other, not looking after each other, but honestly, like either letting people drop the ball because, well, that's not my responsibility, right? It's outside of my sphere. Instead of saying, hey, how can I help? How can I pick up and look after others on the team? Leaders internally may become frustrated and start second guessing their decisions and looking at team loyalty and being frustrated and like, oh my gosh, how am I not being able to bring this team together, bring them around? And then, oftentimes when you see micromanaging coming in, it's because trust is low. They're feeling like, well, I don't know if they're going to get it done. How can I tell? I need to go in there. I need to be checking on them every little moment. I mean, I remember one time I was working with a manager who micromanaged me on so many things, and it just felt um, like they didn't respect me. They didn't feel like they trusted me. And it was really demoralizing. And so it was harder for me to stay engaged and to keep going. And now I didn't give up. I wanted to keep figuring out a way to do that, but not everybody does. And some people do disengage. Some people do leave. And that's not what we want for you or your organization, for the relationship in your life. You don't want people shutting down. And if trust isn't prioritized, people will start acting out of self-preservation instead of team preservation. They're going to like pull up and they're going to try and hold power. They're going to feel and try to make themselves perhaps irreplaceable. And I like to make people indispensable, but not irreplaceable. But if they hold the power, that if you're like, I'm not going to share this information, I'm going to hold back. Um, Leaders can also unintentionally create an environment where vulnerability is seen as a weakness. That's really bad. We want to have some vulnerability, certainly transparency in where we're coming from. And I remember early on in my career, I remember this mistake that I made. This is very early on in computer and shared networks when I had deleted something accidentally. I didn't realize I was moving things around. I could have not said anything because nobody really would know, but I knew. And I knew I had to speak up and, fortunately had a great manager at the time and, he's like, "No, it can be restored. I understand. We're gonna fix it." But I had to own up to it, and I felt safe in that space. So in that case, my relationship was being built up, and I still have connections with this, gentleman who I've known for many, many years through multiple companies. I'm very grateful for the way he showed up as a leader. And that's inspired me to continue on with one of many. But when we look at relationships, they can break down externally around us. They can break down within us, meaning we're having worry, we're having doubt, we're second guessing ourselves, right? Um, and then what happens is the actual moral fabric can fall apart. The ethics of what we're trying to do here can be brought down. So I like one of my favorite authors in this space of organizational health and well-being is Patrick Lencioni, and he has a number of great books. But one of the quotes he says is, "The trust is knowing that when a team member pushes you, they're doing it because they care about the team. Do you know that your team is they're caring about you, or do you feel attacked or feel on defense? That should be a red flag warning to you. Hey, you know what? Trust is breaking down here. What can we do to improve it?" Sometimes we don't have all the tools and the resources. Hence, the Intelligent Human Leadership podcast to help equip you that. And of course, the ongoing tools and resources I have outside of this podcast. Here's a way we can do a self check, if you will, and look, are we building bridges or walls? Um, there was a great new song out by Mindy Smith, an artist I really enjoy, and she talks about a new song about building bridges. I'd rather build bridges than be a wall. They both serve purposes for different reasons, but if we're building relationships and we're intentional, it's about building the bridges. So here's the thing you can ask yourself, and I want you to really take this in here in the podcast, because what I'm trying to do is giving you actionable things that you can do today that will empower you to be more effective and influential in the folks that are in your circle. Are you more focused on tasks or on people? Just just listen and go through this here with me. Do your team members know you as a leader or just as a manager? Now, oftentimes need to be both things. So, and most folks start out as a manager first, and then they may become a leader or they may not. How often do you engage in non-transactional conversations? Now, you've heard me talk about different voices, the 5 voices. It's an amazing framework, and if you'd like to check it out, just go to stewardyourbusiness.com/5 voices. But you're going to be naturally prone to being perhaps more relational for some folks, and others are more task oriented. Neither are right or wrong, but just understand how it contributes to the relationships that you find yourself in. If you're around those folks that are perhaps more transactional and task oriented, they're probably going to welcome that, and naturally that's going to be fine for them. Other folks are going to be maybe more social and want to talk and be less transactional. Both are important and necessary. And what I'm saying is, you as a leader need to understand what is it like on the other side of you. Uh, and if we're not paying attention to that, we're going to undermine our influence, credibility with the other person listening. So, when is the last time here you asked yourself, you asked a team member, not just yourself, how are they doing without an agenda? Are you actually listening for what they have to say? Or are you just going through the motion? This is hard for some of you that just aren't naturally relational, which typically are, I use the word nurturer or connector. Those are the voices that come up in the 5 voice framework. They're more relational in different ways, where nurturers are more about your emotional needs, where connectors like myself are more about getting you resources and seeing how you're being taken care of that way. Perhaps are you more likely to criticize when something goes wrong or connect? Guardians are honestly very clear, and they're typically gonna criticize. Even a pioneer is very focused and mission driven, and so they might be very frustrated, and so they're more apt to criticize. And I've talked about this in past episodes about support and challenge. And if you missed that episode, go back where I've talked about the support challenge matrix. I'm going to give you a quick snippet here, but we all lead naturally with one or the other, and we need both. We need both of them. So, people generally are not leaving companies; they leave kind of the direct management that's under them. How are they being treated? How are they being, how are they being cared for? Are you looking after their best interest or are you just looking again purely transactional? We have an opportunity to serve as a leader, again being that intelligent human leader. If you come from a place in a mindset of abundance and that I get to serve, I get to have this opportunity, it's much different than what can you do for me, what have you done for me lately, uh you know and so you may be putting undue challenges on your team, if you're not paying attention to this. um and you know this is something that is not a one and done. It's something that we need to be ongoing and paying attention to. And this is what my passion is, quite honestly, is working with you or your team and collaborating. How can we improve this amongst the organization? Some practical fixes or ways to strengthen relationships are really, schedule sometimes the non-transactional conversation. Could just be a regular check-in. Maybe once a month, just schedule 15 minutes on your calendar. You know, one way we can evaluate what's important to you for all of us is what's gets scheduled, what's on your calendar, where are you spending your time, where are you spending your money? And that's a reflection of what's most important. And would you say you're people that would say they feel important, they feel valued? Are you being a true steward of what you have been given? That's my company's name is Steward Your Business because I believe human beings are the most valuable asset that any company has. Um, give trust first. Leaders often wait for people to earn trust, but I want to flip the script, if you will. Give it first. Start by giving, because again, if you're coming from a place of abundance and a well connected, then you're going to have that ability. If you don't have that and you're coming from a place of deficit, that's a hopefully a warning sign to you, meaning I'm not getting filled up. What's going on in my world? Because I should be coming from a place of an opportunity to give and to serve rather than to take and extract. So I want to help you become aware of that so that you can be more influential in your team. Creating clarity, cutting through the noise, the muddiness, uh, eliminating ambiguity by clearly defining roles, expectations, goals, mission, all of those things. And it's not a one and done. That's what a lot of leaders I see fail. They say, well, I talked about it one time. It's just not that it doesn't work that way. Unfortunately, it's not set it and forget it. I can't say to my wife, "I love her once and that's enough." No, it's reinforcing and being clear. For those of you that have children, you understand how important it is to go back, reinforce, "Hey, this is how we get things done. This is why we get it done." They forget. All of us do. It's not it's part of our human experience. But if you can create clarity, eliminate ambiguity, shore up any of this misunderstandings and being intentional about it and own it when you drop the ball. I know I've had to do this multiple times over the years where I have not been clear direction and it damaged the relationship. Now, it could be healed, and some of these weren't major, but some of them were like, "Hey, I need to be intentional about when I'm giving an assignment to somebody, I'm thinking through all the steps of what they're gonna need to be successful," and not leaving, gaps in there. By fostering vulnerability or transparency, we're willing to share and own our mistakes. Where did we mess up? I mentioned that earlier podcast. It creates safety when you do that. You might feel like, man, they're not gonna trust me because I messed up. Well, we all do, as long as we're not making the same mistake and we're adjusting. But if you make a repeated mistake, that is definitely affecting your credibility. So you need to own it and then make strides to address where you're dropping the ball. I would also say, um, embrace conflict or collision, if you will. Disagreement isn't necessarily a problem in and of itself. The avoidance of that is, though. So if you're creating a space where people just want to avoid not having the conversation and they just kind of let that fester and grow, that is not healthy. Learn to navigate the hard conversations with empathy and directness. You know, listen again where they're coming from, bring it out as soon as you can in the open, into the light, if you will, so that way we can build in these small moments. Trust is built in the small moments. Brené Brown says, we need to be focusing on these moments. They will build. They're building blocks or they're breaking down. And that can go a long way to living a more fulfilled and life. And I think all of us want that. We want to have connection with others. We want to feel fulfilled. We want to feel like we have that um, ability to be known. I think every one of us wants that, to be known and to be loved and appreciated. And so if you can lead that way, lead from what you live, by one of my good colleagues, Tina Lizzie, always likes to say, this is going to lead you to being in a more effective, fulfilled life. So where are your relationships suffering right now? On your business, in your team that you're leading, you know, um, what's one action that you can take this week to build trust with someone perhaps who has drifted or is further away? I want to encourage you take the first step. Don't wait for them to make the first step because sometimes they will, never will. But you are smarter. You have learned a little bit today on the podcast about how you can show up in a more intentional and healthy way. If you're ready to go deeper, I want to invite you to take a leadership audit where I go through that, or check out the communication code. This also picks up on what we talked about last week. Communication is just another tool to look at relationship breakdowns. You just go to stewardyourbusiness.com/communication code, take the free assessment there. Now, healthy relationships are really the foundation to every high performing team. Culture is going to trump any systems or processes over the long haul. Without trust, there is no teamwork. And without teamwork, there is no sustainable growth. Again, like I said before, you haven't failed, you're just not finished. And we want to keep building you here in this leadership that works. So, our next episode, we're going to tackle alignment and why everybody is busy, but nothing is quite getting done. So, if you ever had a team full of talent that misses the mark, you don't want to miss this next episode. I so appreciate you guys being a part of with me on this journey. Of course, liking and subscribing is really helpful, helps me get the word out. We continue to grow our YouTube channel as well. So if you're listening to this audio and you want to come see the video, I would invite you to go to YouTube and look up Steward Your Business. Join us there. Also, Business Roundtable podcast, another great video clips and such. But thank you so much for being a part of this journey. Reach out to me with any questions or comments. I'm happy to answer them for you. I'd love to meet you, the listeners, and appreciate you being on this journey with me on the Intelligent Human Leadership Podcast. Until next time, be well, take care of those relationships. Thanks everybody for listening. Take care.